August 23rd, 2016. Tuesday of the 21st week in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the second letter of St. Paul to the Thessalonians. We ask you, brothers and sisters, with regard to the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our assembling with him, not to be shaken out of your minds suddenly, or to be alarmed either by a spirit or by an oral statement, or by a letter allegedly from us to the effect that the day of the Lord is at hand. Let no one deceive you in any way. To this end, he has also called you through our gospel to possess the glory of our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, brothers and sisters, stand firm and hold fast to the traditions that you were taught, either by an oral statement or by a letter of ours. May our Lord Jesus Christ himself and God our Father, who has loved us and given us everlasting encouragement and good hope through his grace, encourage your hearts and strengthen them in every good deed and word. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "The Lord comes to judge the earth." Say among the nations, "The Lord is king. He has made the world firm, not to be moved. He governs the peoples with equity. The Lord comes to judge the earth. Let the heavens be glad and the earth rejoice. Let the sea and what fills it resound. Let the plains be joyful and all that is in them. Then shall all the trees of the forest exult. The Lord comes to judge the earth. Before the Lord, for he comes to rule the earth. He shall rule the world with justice and the peoples with his constancy. The Lord comes to judge the earth.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You pay tithes of mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier things of the law, judgment and mercy and fidelity. But these you should have done without neglecting the others. Blind guides who strain out the gnat and swallow the camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You cleanse the outside of cup and dish, but inside they are full of plunder and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, cleanse first the inside of the cup, so that the outside also may be clean." The Gospel of the Lord.
August 23rd, Tuesday of the 21st week in Ordinary Time. The first reading comes from 2 Thessalonians 2, 1-3a and 14-17. Paul speaks about the fact that some messages have been coming to this community, whether by oracles given by so-called prophets, or supposedly by letters from Paul himself, saying that the end of the world was at hand. We know that in the beginning of Paul's ministry, he emphasized eschatology, the end of the world. In fact, in 1 Thessalonians, we see a large number of references to it, and that only makes sense because one of the signs of the end of the world was the dead would rise from the grave. When Jesus rose from the dead, it was a sign that the end of the world had already begun. We're living on borrowed time. And that's why throughout Paul's ministry you see this insistence on traveling from place to place, almost an urgency, because he wants to preach the gospel to the ends of the earth before the end of the world. But that's a far distant thing from saying that the end of the world is coming tomorrow or the day after. And that's exactly what some of these people are teaching. So what does the author of this letter say? Hold on to our tradition, what was taught before this time. Notice how he calls it tradition. And that's a word that would be used for a teaching that occurred a long time ago. This is one of the reasons why we doubt that Paul actually wrote this letter, talking about his own teaching as tradition, as opposed to using another term for it. It implies that 1 Thessalonians is a letter that was written in the old times. The Gospel is from Matthew 23, 23-26. Jesus continues his condemnation of the actions of the scribes and the Pharisees. They tithe mint and dill and cumin. These are spices, these are herbs, and they take 1/10 of what they would have used and give it to the temple. So picture yourself taking the salt shaker and counting out every 10th grain of salt for your offering to the temple. That's scrupulosity. But then they don't do the really important things like practice justice and mercy and fidelity. He says, you strain out the gnat and swallow the camel. That's typical Jewish exaggeration. Remember how Jesus said, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven? It's that same idea. It's a wild exaggeration, saying that these people have just missed the point. They wash the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside, not so much inside the cup and the dish, but inside their own hearts, there is plunder and self-indulgence. What is really important to change? Our inner motivations, our conscience, our heart. Because if we do that, then the rest of the things will change also. And may God bless us.